Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What If? And they did a really good job on this episode, because we're seeing everything that's working in the framework, and it's shot in a really cool way. The coloring is darker and kind of like grayish, and it really sets the mood of things are not exactly right. So, we open in on Daisy and kind of like the continuation of where we ended the last episode. And we see her freaking out as well as Simmons throughout this episode as they acclimate to the strangeness of the framework because of certain pivotal choices that are changed. The world's a vastly different place now. So we find out that Daisy's boyfriend, or as she's known in here, Skye, is Ward. And of course, with all the history that Daisy has with Ward, this would completely throw her. And this Ward, it's kind of off-putting because you're so used to him being villainous and him just being kind of like regular, kind of like, oh, is this a thing now? Because she tried to use her powers on him and she doesn't have her powers in the framework. And be like, okay, what's up? Doing text that we have to go into work. He hands her ID and find out that they both work at Hydra. And she's kind of like acclimating to what's going on, trying to figure out what to do. And Ward's like, what the heck's wrong with you? And they're driving in the car. And we get stuff on the radio about like Inhumans being captured and not to be trusted. And they see the Triskelion with the Hydra logo and everything. And it's just like completely off-putting to Daisy. They go and we see this weird Hydra statue and just trying to figure out what's going on. Like, okay, we gotta go to debriefing and everything and like apologizing for not wanting to move in together. And she's like, no, it's okay. That's pretty much what I'm about right now. I'm pissed, trying to cover her tracks. And like, okay, let's go to this briefing and figure out what's going on. So they make their way through. They get to a set of like Hydra cubicles or whatnot. She's like, okay, just let me go check my email. And he's like, but everybody who'd email you is already in the briefing. Yeah, now I want to catch up. So he goes on ahead. She gets into the Hydra database and is looking up Lincoln, finds out that he died in testing, and kind of confusing her, and starting to try and look up other people, sees that Gemma's dead. And then that's when May comes up behind and says, you get your ass to the briefing, pretty much. She's like, well, and then she's trying to kind of get to May, like, I got into it, I got into the framework, and she's like, I don't care what you hacked into. Come on now, do I have to drug test you? And Daisy's like completely shocked at how in May is to the framework and just how entrenched she is into what's going on. So while they're going into the briefing, we get into Gemma's situation, which, as we've seen from the last episode, since they were trying to go into their avatars, it's kind of, we were kind of going to be confused as to how this was going to work, because in this simulation, Gemma's dead. So what happens is Gemma comes out of the ground and is like confused. She's like, oh god, somebody murdered me, because there's like bullet holes in her clothing. And she gets out and she looks down and there's another body there and she's like, holy crap. So she like goes out, gets through a fence, and we find out that it was a previous S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, and we have Hydra spray painted on that. And she's like, that's not good. So she's picked up by a woman in a car and they're like driving on. She's like, I don't kind of want to get into it. She's like, okay, that's fine. And Gemma's like all disheveled and trying to kind of go with the situation. And she's trying to like dig into this woman in the car because Gemma's in detective mode a little bit at this point, because she's trying to figure out new weaknesses within the framework's programming. And she's like, oh, you have dreams and everything. That's interesting, because she's thinking of it as code, and rightly so, like a program. But the way this works in the framework is they give off very human-like programming. Like, they act very human-like, which is really interesting because Ada's still trying to figure that human stuff out, and she's able to program that in a simulation for programs to not understand that they're programs and to work as humans. Now, granted, that works in the life model decoy, but to actually create a human personality from a program in a framework is vastly more complex than scanning someone. Because if you scan someone, you've got the basic kind of template. These people are working, these programs are working as people. They are, for intents and purposes, AI within this. And that's a kind of scary thing. Because, as we've seen, Ada got out of Radcliffe's control, and what would happen if a whole world of AI got outside of Ada's control? Now, granted, she's probably built in contingencies because she's like, I want to make sure that my kids don't come and kill me in my sleep, kind of thing. But we'll have to see where that kind of goes. So they get to a checkpoint, and she's like, well, do you have your ID? I kind of guess I lost it. Or she pulls it out and she's like, get out of my car. So Gemma goes off and kind of tries to figure out her own kind of situation. And we get back to Daisy, and they're pretty much going through the briefing. Here's this Inhuman subversive, pretty much we need to figure out what's going on with him. And, of course, Daisy recognizes him as Vijay Nadir, but going under a different name of Jason. So her and Ward are tasked with breaking him in an interrogation. So they're kind of doing their thing. We still don't know what to feel about Ward. He's trying to pump him for information. Then Daisy gets a text to like hurry this up. So she pretty much starts going off and pretty much taking a story apart, talking about how he's got like a trucking business, or one of the trucks is missing, that this is a Hydra issued ID and it's wrong, that your name is Nadir, and then that's when Ward goes in and pretty much punches him to pretty much break his jaw. Daisy, of course, is like, why did you do that? Of course he's not going to say anything now because you broke his jaw. And May comes in and says, we're going to send him to the doctor. So that's when Daisy takes Nadir goes and takes him to the doctor, but along the way she's like, listen, I can help you. And he's like, screw that. She's responsible for Bahrain and all that kind of stuff. And evidently, because of the Bahrain incident, instead of killing the girl, she was taken to Cambridge, and that let loose an incident where she killed more people. We get more of that as we see Coulson in the classroom talking about the whole incident and teaching it to the classroom, saying about how before this incident, the world was divided and everything. Everybody had their own truths, media's agendas, but after that, we decided to put the state above the individual. And you can kind of see that throughout everything that's going on in this Hydra world. And then this one kid is just kind of grilling him. He's like, but aren't Hydra Nazis? He's like, no, they're not Nazis. They, are an organization and centuries old and everything. It means nothing. But he's still harping on that. And then we see that these people come in, ask for a kid, and Coulson lets them take him out of the classroom for Inhuman testing and all that. And of course, since that's testing is pretty much what Lincoln was involved in, we're pretty sure that that kid is dead. So that's how we kind of get into the state of the world, as we see also through Gemma, seeing that nobody's got smartphones, looking at just like one newspaper. Pretty much she's trying to steal all these kind of things to get out, but she gets captured by some Hydra agents who she's able to pretty much take out, which I'm glad they're showing that Simmons is a more effective agent than people give her credit for now, because she can feign that she doesn't have the ability to defend herself, get in a position, take out the people, take their guns, and take their car and gonna drive off. So that's kind of where we get Simmons at, as we had seen that after we learn all that stuff about Bahrain, Nadir tries to escape, but we find out that the doctor is Fitz, and that he's completely changed as well. Because he starts riding Daisy for letting the prisoner escape, and then, of course, they kind of go off, and we see that they start experimenting on Nadir with these kind of weird needle arms that are pretty much burning him, and it's like, oh, we can test an Inhuman's like mutation without making him go through Terrigenesis. It's like, looks without, and this is without any side effects. It's like, well, burning him. It's like anything to us. And she's like, that's a crime against humanity. He's like, well, let me put it to you this way. I'll ask for your opinion. If I don't, keep it to yourself. And then he starts going on like, oh, I saw that your application for cohabitation was approved. How'd that go? And he's like, well, Ward doesn't want to do it and all that. And of course, that's kind of where they're kind of stopped, because that's when May comes in and says all this stuff about, somebody was found to be with like a SHIELD ID or around the SHIELD area, and he's like, well, who was it? It seems like Simmons is still important to Fitz in some way. So that's where they start sending off people to go after Simmons. Skye leaves early, and of course, Ward's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I kind of leave early. I gotta do stuff." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm pissed." Goes off. So we'd seen that Gemma had been at the park and had gotten this button thing from underneath the rock. Leaves an X on the bench and then goes off to try to attempt to reason with Coulson, because she was able to look in the database, found that there was no mention of Daisy, and that Coulson was a teacher. So she's trying to get him to remember who she is and remember who he is. And as an important part, as she was coming into his classroom, he was clipping out clippings and kind of making a file thing out of it. Everything she doesn't really succeed in jogging his memory, except when she's about to leave and sees the hula girl and tries to bring up Tahiti and that it's a magical place and trying to hammer that in, but that doesn't work for him. And he, of course, is the one that calls in the subversive stuff, and that's how they get onto Simmons. As that's continuing on, we see that it eventually gets to the point where Simmons is still at the park and, well, gets back to the park because she had gotten a card from the kid who had spray painted Hydra lies on her car, and she's like getting frustrated. "You damn bit of rogue code. No, Hydra are Nazis," and pretty much going on that spiel, and he feels bad and gives her his car, and of course that's where she goes back to the park. Daisy arrives at the park, and they kind of join up together, and they're like, "Okay, let's get out of here." And Ward shows up and is like, "Is this your source into the resistance? Because there's a resistance going on." That's what the kid had told Simmons, like, "I'm going to go out into the resistance and do all that kind of stuff and really mess up your life and all that." And Ward is like really hammering this point on, and they're like, "No, she's not in the resistance. She's just a friend." And then, of course, a Hydra dude pops up, and Ward takes them out and says, "Good, because I'm with the resistance. Come with me." So then it's like, okay, so this world is just really fucked up version where, like, the good guys that we know as the good guys are now bad, and the bad guys are good. And it just still works within their kind of framework, because Ward was always a double agent in the real world, and they fit it into, I guess, from all the memories of everybody involved in the framework to do the same thing. So they're kind of like trying to figure out, there's a cool car chase scene, and they go into a parking garage. He's like, "Well, the doors and the drones are going to be coming, so we got to get out of here." So he sends them off to an apartment where they'll be safe, and that he's going to be coming on afterwards. So they get to the apartment, they're talking about all the stuff that they had found, and they try to use the button to escape because Daisy said a smart thing. "We need a plan. We need to figure out how to tackle this situation because we are not having success jogging people's memories." And they try to use the button and find out that they can't get out. So the kind of final bit of the puzzle that we get to see is that they weren't able to get footage from the drones for the people, or like much footage, or that the footage was supposed to be sent directly to the director. So that's where, because there was a conversation with Fitz and May, and then she's just like, "Well, do we have them?" It's like, "Yeah, but it's sent directly to the director who I'm going to see right now." So he goes off, and we see the director is Ada. And now, granted, this is an Ada that's acting a little bit more human-like within the program, but she's still dangerous, because we see a shot of Simmons on her screen, and he's like asking what to do, "Show me who it is," and she's like, "No, I got this. I've closed off and eliminated loopholes. We'll get them. Don't worry about it. We need your creativity," because Ada knows if Fitz sees Simmons, that's probably endgame, and he's out. Because evidently, Ada and Simmons have a relationship in the framework. Now, that's interesting to see if Ada actually, in the real world, has those kinds of feelings for Fitz, or wants those. We know that Fitz has more of a kind of creator, kind of brotherly, I think, attachment to Ada. Elder brother kind of like father kind of relationship, because he helped create her with Radcliffe, rather than a romantic one, because he's all in for Simmons. So we see that that's kind of where the end goal is with that. So it's like, okay, this is going to be pretty dangerous, especially since Ada can... We don't know if this is like Ada herself, or like she's split herself off and made different copies, and that this copy is like left in the framework to keep control over it. Like, of course, the director of the whole simulation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Now, the last bit we get is Daisy talking to Coulson because she slipped in the car, and we had seen before Coulson went out to the car that he has all these files with all these different kind of things tied to his memories, like a calendar that's got a picture of Lola, all these different kind of things, this postcard from Tahiti, and writings of It's a Magical Place. So he gets in the car, they start talking, and she's like, I thought if anyone would remember me, it'd be you because we're like family. And then that gets Coulson to be like, Daisy, because he was saying he didn't know her. So we've got Coulson. And it makes sense that Coulson would be the first one to kind of be jogged out of it because he's been the one that's got the most experience with memory wipes. So now that they've got at least one of them on the track to getting their memories back and trying to get them out of the simulation, I think it's just a matter of time before they are able to snowball it to get other people involved. Now we got to watch out for how Ada's going to try and checkmate these gains and try and keep everybody within the simulation and what power she has in the simulation to rewrite memories. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.